real Reba Rambo McGuire. Stand up. Sweetheart is here today, Reba Rambo McGuire, and she's so pretty.
You're totally prejudiced, too.
I know I am, but I'm telling the truth. I'm so glad you took time off. I know you've been recording, darling, and doing your new musical and traveling all over the world, but it's good to have you on Mama's set today.
Oh, it's good to be here, Mom.
Going back, you know, I was such a kid when you was born. You were there, but you don't remember, do you?
No, I don't remember.
I was just barely 17 when Reba was born, and
just
we
baby
really
having a baby.
That's right. We grew up together.
Yeah,
didn't
we did. I raised you. Ever get you raised, it's going to be wonderful. But that's good. I always admired you because Mom was always a songwriter, and I always admired the gift. But you know, it was real funny. I went through this thing of, you know, wanting to be just like you and wanting to be exactly opposite. Wanting to be a songwriter and saying, no, that's the last thing I want to be. I want to be a surgeon.
You wanted to be a doctor, a surgeon.
I want to be a surgeon, yes. And it was a real conflict within myself. You know, maybe mothers and daughters all go through that. I don't know.
I think so.
But it was a real conflict within me for a long time.
But we never had any trouble. I can honestly tell you this. This is truth, folks. As long as I can remember back, I've never had one cross word with Reba. We've never fought. Now, I've spanked her a lot when she was little, and still would. But we have really been probably the closest mommy and daughters that you'll ever see anywhere.
Well, even your whippings were something to behold. Mother never whipped me when she was mad. Whenever I would pull a temper tantrum or whatever I would do when I was a little girl, Mother would say, now, Reba, in about an hour, you're going to get a whipping. She never jerked me when she was mad like some people do in malls, and I can't stand it when mothers whip their babies. But you'd say in about an hour you're going to get a whipping. And I'd go clean my room, wash the dishes, do whatever. And in about an hour's time, you'd always take me into the bathroom. I'll never forget it. And you'd set me down on the edge of the bathtub there. I can still see us. And you'd say, now, darling, do you know why you're getting this whipping? And I'd tell you yes or no. If I didn't know why, you'd tell me why.
You never knew why.
And then Mother would whip me. And then she'd say, now, honey, hug Mommy and tell me you love me. And if I didn't tell her I loved her, then I got another whipping.
Right.
So I would tell you I loved you. But there was something wonderful about that hugging and saying, you know, we loved each other, which I always did, you know. Sure. And that was real neat. You were a good mommy. You were, to be so young, you were really good.
Well, you know, I was raised with 9 kids in my family, so I had a lot of practice. Yeah. But the one thing I can remember, you was 2.5 years old, and you'd ridden your tricycle into the street, which you always were very good to mind me, but somehow that had to be an adventure you had to do. And I told you I was going to spank you. The hour was almost up, and you had little tables and chairs in the kitchen, little bitty that matched mine, and you fell on your knees and slid all the way to the table in a praying position and said, oh, Jesus, help me right now, Lord. And that's the only time I ever promised you a spanking I didn't give you.
Yeah, but
the next time you tried it again.
Right, it didn't work. Next time, one time, though, I got a whipping that way. God answered prayer one time anyway. That was fun. We were crazy growing up. Because Mother, I mean, you were fun. You'd get out right in the sandbox with me and play. And you were good. You traveled a lot and sang, but the times we had together, you were right in there with me and were a kid with me. And a lot of moms are not, they don't do that with their children, it seems like. Nowadays, you played cutouts with me and Play-Doh and the whole thing. And you
Germs, your invisible dog.
Germs, my invisible dog, we'd play with. And my 3 invisible ladies that came to tea. Didn't we have fun with them?
I'm telling you, didn't we? No.
Don't we still have fun with them?
I wonder what they look like, Reba.
We still play.
When Reba was about 10 years old, Reba, just sort of tell us about that frightening night. this is the most incredible story that you'll hear, I think. I was gone this night this all started, and I want Reba to share something with you.
Well, you were in, I think, Marion, Illinois, and you were in a revival, the last night of a revival, and my grandmother, my mom's mom, Grandma Luttrell, was staying with me, and she read me a story in the Bible, Samson and Delilah. I'll never forget it. And as she was reading this story, my head began to hurt harder and harder till I finally said, Grandmother, I can't listen anymore. And she put me to bed, and my fever got real high, and I started getting a rash about the size of dimes all over me, little red blood spots it looked like. And Mother and Dad came in from the revival about 3 in the morning, and I was so sick, my fever was so high, and you called our family doctor, and he said for us to meet him in the emergency room. And we went in, and he took one look at me and said that I had spinal meningitis. And he started immediately to send medicine to the kids that I was in school with, because it's so contagious, and they were giving them sulfur drugs, and they put me in a little isolated room, and for several hours I was in a coma, but I was screaming, Samson, don't let Delilah cut your hair off. And I was driving the nurses crazy. And but then all of a sudden there was silence, and I slipped deep into the coma. And I remember you saying you prayed I would, talk about Samson, Delilah, or anything. And the doctors finally came to you and Dad. Ted Satterfield, I remember, who was a technician, came to you and said, I want to take you to the lab and see the germs that are multiplying and show you why, if Reba by some miracle does live, she'll never be more than a vegetable. They had proof that my brain was destroyed, because you believe that sometimes. I think Donnie teases me and says he thinks my brain's been destroyed.
That's the other miracle we're going to talk about, folks.
But it really was. It was gone. And
Reba, I wanted to ask you, and never have remembered to, what was the last thing you remembered in that little room when 5 doctors backed against the wall? Could you hear them talking?
No, I really couldn't. I remember barely going into the hospital, and I remember seeing them. I was laying on a stretcher, and they were literally running through the halls with me. The doctors were trying to get me out away from everybody, because I was so contagious. I mean, spinal meningitis can get in epidemic proportions. It's just incredible. And they were trying to get me in this little isolated area. And I remember looking up at those doctors in the white, and I couldn't tell. To me, they kind of looked like angels. And I remember thinking at that moment, well, maybe I'm dying. But I was confused. I couldn't tell if the men in the white were technicians or angels, because my fever was so high. I was so out of it. But the last thing then there was just total silence and quiet. And I remember just being in a real peaceful place. Dad, whenever he had an experience, whenever he literally died, when he had his heart attack, he said he remembered it like what David said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil. That's the best way I noticed it. It was a valley, and I remember the green, cool grass under my feet, but it wasn't scary. It was a quiet, peaceful place is what I remember the best. But to make a long story shorter, you were out in the hospital corridor, and they had said, this is it, she's dying. And there were 5 specialists in my room. And Dad was there just literally lying across me, sobbing.
Did you know
weeping.
He was laying across you?
No, I really didn't know that. But you told me that. And Mom was outside in the hospital corridor crying and weeping. And our little pastor, Reverend Jimmy Russell, came walking down the corridor of the hospital with a spring in his step, his hat in his hand, and he was whistling.
Yeah.
And you said, I can't believe he's whistling.
It made me mad, because I was this little frustrated kid, scared to death. My child was dying, and my pastor was whistling.
Right. And he walked over and started putting his gown and mask on to go in my isolated room. And Mother said she walked over with tears in her eyes, says, Brother Russell, haven't you heard Reba's dying? But you said behind the mask you could see him grinning. And he said, well, I've just talked to the great physician, and he says that ain't so.
Yeah.
And you and Grandmother put on your gowns and masks and followed him into my room, and he picked Dad up by the face and kind of patted his cheek and said, it's going to be all right. And at that moment, the best way I know to describe it, what I felt, I could see myself lying on my back with my arms and legs kind of outstretched, and it was like I was spinning around and around, sinking into peace is the best way I know it. Even though it was darkness, it wasn't this scary kind of darkness. But just sinking into peace is the best way I know it. And all of a sudden, my body did a flip, and I started going back up a funnel type thing. And I thought, and I didn't really want to go back.
The Lord was sending you back to us.
Yeah, I didn't really want to go back. I thought, well, what a drag, I'm leaving this peace. But it was, and I started turning back, and I really was kind of sad in a way, but I knew I was coming back.
Right.
And I had my eyes open, spinning upward, and I could see this little thin, you know, this little pin speck of light, and I thought, well, if I just get to the light, then I'll be back. And the light kept getting brighter and brighter, and in my mind's eye, I closed my eyes, but in reality, I opened my eyes, and I sat up in the bed and started singing a little chorus. Oh, how I love Jesus. And the 5 doctors hit their knees, and Mom's letting out a war whoop. You know, she doesn't care. And I didn't know.
And Buck's standing with his mouth wide open.
And I didn't really know what was going on. All I knew, I woke up, I was starving. I said, Mom, if you don't fix me some beans and cornbread, I'm going to die.
Can you believe it? She's from the South. And you know, that one doctor couldn't speak any English at all. And I don't think he even professed Christ at all. Our family physician is a great Christian there. But he was just baffled. He just backed against the wall. And what Reba didn't know, when this was going on, it was like when Reverend Russell prayed that simple prayer of faith. It was like a cloud. I've never seen it before or since. Like a smog or fog came all the way to the waist of everybody. It just hovered over the bed. And Reba's fever had gotten so high that her hair just started immediately falling out. It just eventually broke off and fell off, and she wore wigs, which we didn't tell for a while. 7 years until her hair grew back.
Well, what was great, Mom, several miracles happened around that. My hair, the doctor said, was destroyed at the root because of the fever, and said I'd never have hair. And you said, no child of mine's going to be bald-headed.
That's right.
And I remember Mother taking olive oil, like the anointing oil, and literally massaging my scalp and praying over it. And this is, you know, I'm not hardly bald-headed, as y'all can see. But also a couple of the experimental drugs they tried on me, they found out later literally killed other people they tried them on. And the Lord protected me even in that way. And it's just such a miracle. And, you know, and obviously my brain's not destroyed. But it's just a wonderful thing how the Lord, He had a plan for my life. And some people ask, say, why do you sing gospel music? And I always go back to that story and say, because my life's not my own. The Lord gave it back to me. And I really believe, I'd always sung.
I know personally, excuse me, I know personally that you had so many offers, and I'm not bragging, I'm telling the truth, to do secular, contemporary pop music by big names in Nashville, Tennessee. I know that. Go ahead, darling.
But it's wonderful to show you. I always had sung since I can remember, but for several years I quit singing around that time. But I really believe whenever the Lord restored my life back to me, that I don't know what He did, but I think my voice He changed it. I don't know how to explain it, but there was the gift was different to sing from that time on, and He gave me back my life. So of course I'm gonna sing for Him.
Absolutely, it was so incredible. You really would have had to have been there. The next day, Reba wanted to go home right then. She was fine. And the doctor says, oh, no, you're contagious, you know, you can't leave the room, because some of them didn't really believe that she'd been healed. And so I said, BB, Reba, GB, we call her everything. Just stay and let them do anything they want to do and run all the tests they want to. See, it's good to prove the Lord.
That's right.
To prove what He's done. So I wasn't afraid. I knew He'd healed her. So the next day they ran all these tests. She was so bored. Where are my clothes? I want to go home. I want to see my dolls and whatever, you know. Well, the next day they came in with a clean bill of health. The only thing we could see was that her hair was destroyed. And the Lord beautifully took care of that. She put her clothes on, walked out of the hospital, and for years when I go back, even now, recently, last year, I saw this doctor, and he says, where's our little weird miracle child? How's she doing?
And you know, Mother, to show how the Lord protects, the church began to pray, not only for me, but for the children, because I was in school that day that I got sick that night. And the Lord caused such a protection upon those school children that not one other case of meningitis happened in that community. And that had to be God. There was just a protection among all the children, because the church, I mean, they called a prayer and a fast, declared it. And I mean, the Lord protected all of us. It was just so beautiful to see how He worked in that little community.
Men, Dad, and grandmother, and so many people. Is it kind of neat now to kind of find yourself after coming through what you've been through in your new ministry?
It is, Mom, because for so long we all kind of search for identities or something. And it is to find myself maturing in Christ and to kind of know what I want to be when I grow up. For a long time I went through that. And it's not easy to be the daughter of very talented parents even, because there was always the comparison between particularly you and me. And some people were very cruel in that, like you can't write songs like your mother and you can't sing like your mother and you don't have the business ability of your father. But now to grow up and say, I have the best I feel of both of you. That's the way I look at it. I have your gifts to write, and I have just enough of Daddy's business to get by.
Daddy's bluntness.
Daddy's bluntness, yeah.
That's great.
But it's neat to grow up within myself and say, hey, it's okay. I don't have the same gift as you, but that's all right. Wouldn't it be boring if I wrote just like you, or if I sang just like Dad, or whatever? That I'm learning that it's okay to be me. I guess I'm finally, after all this time, learning it's all right that the Lord made me special, and He loves me just like I am. And He's helping me to mature and grow up in the body of Christ as He wants me to, and as I can handle it. He's been so good to me. He's brought me through so many things.
Talk to your daughter today and love her and hug her neck and hold her hand and let her know that you understand her music, her words, her life, her joy. I just thank God that, Reba, God gave me just enough wisdom to say, Reba, I'm going to learn to love your music. The reason I had to learn is because I didn't understand.
Right.
And then when I started understanding it, I started writing some of it. And you do such a great job.
Thank you.
I hope I'll always be what you want Mommy to be, okay? Will you come back and see me?
I will. If you aren't what I want you to be, I'll turn you over my knee.
She's done that too. I love you, little darling.
Mom. You know, my very favorite thing that you fix for any holiday is leg of lamb. As far back as I can remember when I was a little bitty girl, every holiday it was a tradition at our home to have leg of lamb. And it's always delicious. It's always, what are you doing over here?
I'm making gravy. I'm just listening to you brag.
It's great. I want to tell them what you're doing over here.
Okay.
We take 2 sticks of butter or margarine, 1 large onion chopped, 3 cups of soft breadcrumbs, a half a cup of celery chopped, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of parsley chopped, an 1/8 teaspoon of pepper, 2 tablespoons of sage, 1/4 cup of water, 2 teaspoons garlic powder, and 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. And everything is all mixed in here together, with the exception of the breadcrumbs, because you like to cook that in the last minute because you don't want it to cook.
Like a lamb. Christmas, I love to fix this. You know?
Oh,
Donnie and Bud comes in, they get a sample, everything.
Yeah.
It is incredible.
and the way you fix it with this, the way she does this over here, it doesn't have that wild flavor. A lot of times some lamb has it. I don't particularly care for it, but the way you do it, it's just delicious.
Okay, we're making the batter now that we pour into the lamb, and I'll show you. We've got all the ingredients Reba read. We have the cornstarch and water mixed here together. And I think somebody must be back there setting our table for this big feast we're fixing to have.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to pour in the cornstarch. Flour's not good because it usually makes it real lumpy. So I use cornstarch, and we just have this to a pretty good boil for about 5 minutes. And then we pour in this cornstarch, and then as it starts just barely thicken, we don't want it too thick. Okay, Reba, what we're going to do, we're going to get ready to take it right over there to the leg of lamb. Turn this little stove off, and I'll show you what we do.
This is a beautiful leg of lamb. What is this, about 12, 14 pounds?
You know, I don't
lamb?
know. Buck always
like
buys these for me, and this is the little thing I wanted to show you. You want to do this?
You do it.
This little thing that it's a meat tester that you really just put in the meat in the oven. And I never use it for that. I don't care for that. But I take it. Now, your leg of lamb has to be fresh. I don't like to freeze them and then thaw them out. But I just get it fresh. Buck gets the best ones at the market for me. And we punch all these wonderful holes in here like this. And I've already punched them on the other side.
You know what I think I like leg of lamb? I always think back on the children of Israel before they went into the wilderness.
Ooh,
And
they tasted the
they
lamb.
tasted the lamb in their mouth. You wrote a song about that, as a matter of fact. But I think of them, every time you prepare the lamb, I think about them preparing the lamb to eat, to go into the wilderness, and that gave them nourishment,
Yeah.
you know, for their journey. And I think of Christ the Lamb. There's just something special at holiday times about the lamb.
There is. And another thing I think lamb really is so neat during the holidays is because all the family's there, and it's a big,
Yes.
big serving. You know,
Yes.
you don't always get to cook that much. But this is wonderful. Now, we got it all stuffed real good. And now what we have done here, this is a neat little trick you'll like. What I do is, Reba, I take 2 turkey bags. That makes it a little stronger, and it keeps all that wonderful juices in there. And I just pick up, you hold this.
Okay.
And I pick up the leg of lamb like this and aim it in through here. All fresh washed, and all those wonderful holes in it. Put tight screws in it.
Too much like work.
Yep. Okay, we put him just like this, and if you'll hold him up there,
Okay.
I take
We
this.
got to name him.
We're going to name him. Just enough breadcrumbs to thicken up the batter. Now, the little batter that we made on the stove, don't, this is hot, so don't let it burn you. Push it in like this. Just like that. It's like playing games, isn't it? Now, what we do...
It smells so good, that batter you
I
made.
know it. Garlic's coming on. Mamma mia. Hang on to that.
Okay.
Our producer will tell you. He'll love this. Look at this. We tie it real tight. I love Southern cooking, Italian cooking, Mexican, just food. As long as it's, you know, prepared good, I like it. Now this you just turn and turn and turn and turn forever and forever.
And all that sinks in the little holes.
All goes
made,
into
right.
the little bitty
I gotcha.
holes. And it never is dry if you do this. Okay, a lot of times what I'll do, if you have a larger piece of lamb, just take cheesecloth and wrap it first on it, put it in the bag, and then pour all this in. Now what we do, we put this in the oven. Reba, look at our... Okay, it goes in for 350 for 5 hours. Now usually what I do, to really make this good, on the holiday nights,
I know what you do. You cook it a little bit at night before we go to bed. You cook it about 2 hours.
Right.
And then you get up early the next morning and cook it about 3 more hours. So that way, overnight, you just let it sit in those juices.
In the oven.
And it's wonderful. It's so
Yes, it is.
delicious, and it's not the least bit dry, anything but dry.
Okay, so you got all the ingredients. It's right in the cookbook. If you want it, you can order it. You'd love it. This is a wonderful, wonderful recipe. Okay, we leave it in for about... We said 5 hours, but sometimes it's according to what size it is. You don't have to cook it that long. Okay, Reba, we'll put that in the oven. I'm going to step over that way because we're working on lamb mushroom dressing. That goes right along with this.
Okay.
Okay, if you'll put that in the oven for me. And right here, in the cookbook, there is the recipe for cornbread, Reba's cornbread. What I do, I make a big skillet of cornbread the night before I fix this and let it sit there and have it all ready for the next day. I take that whole pan, the big iron skillet of cornbread, and I crumble it up really good like this. Then I take 3 slices of light bread. You can use wheat bread, rye bread, white bread. Crumble it up. That's what all these little things are. Then, you really want to pay attention to this. In this is the from the lamb. Now, lamb is pretty strong, so Reba can read off how much broth it calls for the lamb to pour into the dressing. But you put half lamb broth and half water, or it's going to be terribly, terribly strong for you. Okay, the first thing we're going to do, Reba, you can read the...
Okay, we've got 6 cups prepared cornbread from the recipe in the book. We've got 4 cups biscuits or white bread crumbled, 2 medium onions finely chopped.
Yeah, let's put that in there.
Okay. We have 1/4 of a cup of garlic, I think, which is already in there.
It's already in there.
Okay, 5 eggs well beaten, which there's your 5 eggs well beaten. And 1 cup of celery chopped.
Right here, 1 cup.
Okay. And 1/2 cup butter and margarine. I think it's still in the little thing over there.
I'll let you cook that.
Okay. And 1½ teaspoons of salt.
And that's already in there.
Okay. And 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, a tablespoon of sage, and 2 chicken bouillon cubes dissolved, which you've already done that.
Here we go.
1 can cream of mushroom soup, and 1 cup fresh mushroom sliced. And Mom, I think actually on the drippings, you said then add at least 2 cups lamb drippings. I don't know if that means the drippings and the water or just or what.
It's 2 cups of lamb drippings and 2 cups of water this time, because this will really get dry if you don't do that.
This is very soft, and it's just going to melt on down over there.
That's wonderful. Okay, we didn't get our mushrooms, did we?
No, we didn't.
I always add fresh mushrooms. It just simply makes this a prettier dish, and it's much tastier like that. Okay, and you just work this and really, really, really good. I like to get it, Reba, kind of like a cornbread batter, you know,
right.
And spread it around. Now, when you get all that together, then you start pouring on. This looks like a lot, but it isn't, because this really does absorb all this goodies. You'll see the bread just keeps soaking it up. So you just keep working and working and working.
Oh, it's so porous with the cornmeal.
Why don't you read all those ingredients off again, Dottie?
Okay. And the cookbook, it's called Dottie's Lamb Mushroom Dressing. You have 6 cups prepared cornbread, 4 cups biscuits or white bread crumbled, 2 medium onions finely chopped, 1/4 cup of fresh garlic diced, 5 eggs well beaten, 1 cup of celery chopped, 1/2 cup of butter and margarine, 1½ tablespoons of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, a tablespoon of sage, 2 chicken bouillon cubes dissolved, 1 can cream of mushroom soup, and 1 cup fresh mushrooms sliced. And you know what? It's so wonderful like that, and I can almost eat it raw.
Oh, well, you know, in the North, a lot of people do.
Right,
you know, well, in the North, they use a lot more white breads in it than we, in the South, we use a lot of cornbread in ours. I like it better.
And it says to bake for 35 to 45 minutes at 350, and it says if the dressing gets too dry, then take it out and add a little bit more of your lamb drippings and water, and just pour it on there if it starts to seem a little dry to you.
Something else I do too, Reba, is it's cooking and I think it is too dry. I just take like a little bottle of spray water and just pull that door open, just spray water, and it won't hurt to do do it after you want to reheat it. This is good to reheat. You just put in the microwave or whatever. See how good that's looking? Okay,
delicious.
what we're going to do, we got lamb and we got dressing. And I can see that Miss Judy is over there getting everything ready, and we're going to have holiday dinner in the Rambo's dining room. How's that sound?
It's going to be fun.
Okay, see you there, okay?
And after about 3 or 4 hours, this marvelous lamb is all finished. In times like this, special times, it's so great to have our family home with us and sitting around the table for the holidays. Our adopted daughter, Judy Breland, we call her Bree. We're just glad you're here, sweetheart. And over here, this handsome young man is my son. Some say son-in-law, but he's really my son. I love you, darling. Donnie McGuire. And our daughter, Reba McGuire, his pretty little wife. Isn't she a doll dressed up in her turquoise? And my sweetheart, Buck Rambo. And we're glad to have you looking in at the Rambo family, eating the lamb for these special occasions, for these days. God bless you. Buck, would you pray for us?
Father, we're grateful for the opportunity.